Welcome to our coverage of the Cobarbas Rally, the Cobarbas Shell V-Power Castle Country Rally for 2018, brought to you by Shell V-Power and all their associate sponsors. So in its 5th year of running, we travel up, round the bend and across the border to Namibia to be hosted in the incredible Cattlelands area around Cobarbas. It's going to be an amazing journey to see a complete spread of different vehicles and age categories as we go out and race around this area. A smaller field arriving this time around, but still the racing will be nice and tight. We had a lot of help while we were up there, coming in from Shell V-Power, Cobarbas Auto Truck and Tractor. We were hosted by the Amateko Lodge with television support crew vehicles supplied by OS Motors along with Cobarbas Toyota. We stopped in at OS Motors to check out the latest range of Isuzus going forward into 2018 and the 2019 range. The Amateko Lodge would be base camp for the event, and that would be our starting point to get things kicked off, ready to rock and roll. Everyone would get their cars prepped, looking flash and ready before they rolled out to the Shell V-Power garage in Cobarbas and the ceremonial start of the event. So in Pit Village, it was great to see everyone offloading their cars and getting themselves ready. 10 cars, with the big threat coming in from Vilru Dippenaar and Rian van der Westhuizen to walk away with yet another win. They'd be pushed hard this event though by Jean-Andre Dippenaar, the younger brother, along with Gilly, that's Kilian Visser, in the Bakkie. So would the rally car or the off-road Bakkie get the job done? Before we headed out to the ceremonial start, it was time for all the drivers to go out and recce the course. That means driving all of the stages and making sure all your notes and points are good to go. It's a very important part of rallying that happens behind the scenes. Many people don't know about it, but the crews are able to go out, not allowed to go out in their race vehicles, but are allowed to go out in the support vehicles. They'll mark the GPS coordinates and check their timing and markers are on point. Back into the pits then, after they've gone through all of the D-controls, gone through the pits and gone through all of their notes. Now it's just that last little look over the vehicles to make sure they are good to go and survive 12 incredible racing stages of the Cobarbas Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally for 2018. Not just rally cars though, a very much even spread between rally cars, off-road racing trucks and buggies, with a couple of goofball events thrown in there as well. The standout favourites were definitely going to be Dippenaar and van der Westhuizen. The Land Rover, we saw this running last year around as well, of Stefan and Christian Labuschagne. Lappies, one of the real characters, and then the Lighties as well. This was going to be a story to see what they could do. Jaap Kurtzen and Vian Meyer in the Lexus-powered Farm Bakkie. Cobarbas Toyota would be helping us out with our service vehicles and making sure the sweep vehicles and openers were good to go. Car Zero would mark the opener of the track. Down in the pits then, seeing a couple of the clean smiling faces before they start getting a little bit dirty. Heading out then from the Amateko Lodge Corral and opening up the road as all cars cruised on out and headed back into town to start things out at the Shell V-Power Garage in Cobarbas. 502, Vilru Dippenaar and Rian van der Westhuizen would get themselves locked and loaded. Jaco Redlingace and Dries were going to be a massive threat to see if they can also get the job done. That's Dries Boysen in the Toyota Yaris. On paper, they are the biggest threat, and with a big number 1 plate, you know how fast they run. Jan Averson and Fani Brotus in the first and fastest of the VW Polo's S2000s. S2000s denoting that they are an all-wheel drive system, and they will be able to run solid pace. The Land Rover of Christian and Stefan Labuschagne. Very entertaining drivers. Not necessarily the perfect rally vehicle, but if it's an extremely rough stage, they will be able to dominate. They've run top 5s here before. Bertie Smith and Dewald Venter in the Mazda Magnum, and a true off-road racing prepped vehicle, blurring the line very much between rally and off-road. You can see that they've set the suspension a little bit lower for this event. Kind of unknown this time around, the 22, Jean-Andre Dippenaar and Gilly Visser in the Ford Ranger running in the Shell V-Power colours. go out on track, as well as all of the support vehicles before they're headed on down the road. The farmbackie, as we're going to be calling it the whole way through the event, Jaap Kudsen and Vian Meyer, with a lot of support in one of the most stock vehicles out there. You can see the shortest suspension travel of all of the vehicles. Willem and Johan Oosthuizen in one of the almost a classic racing entry, the Ford Sapphire. You'd see that thing wagging the tail the whole way through the event as one of the few rear-wheel drive sedans. Johan Berg and Herman Roberts will be trying to just keep the Taz up and rolling the whole way through the event. Nicky Swart and Piet Retief would be the only open wheel category going out there to race in the space frames in a V6 powered, what looks like one of the original BAT entries. So join us after the break as we go racing up in Namibia for the first few stages of the Cobarbus Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally.
From personal finance, estate planning, to healthcare and retirement planning, Brian Hirsch and his panel of experts discuss a wide range of issues impacting you, the viewer. This is your chance to ask that question specific to you and your money.
So many people don't understand. What they're doing is they are entering into an agreement with the insurer, and the insurer says, I'm willing to take on certain risks, and there's certain risks that I'm not willing to take on.
That's You and Your Money, live every Monday night at 8:30, exclusive to Business Day TV.
Yes, indeed. Race day and at Cobarbus at the Shell V-Power Garage and Start Arch for everyone to get themselves that last little clean of the screen and locked and loaded. Fire, safety and rescue and all of the support structure was in place to follow all of the crews out. This was a ceremonial start as they made their way out to the first stage of 12. It was going to be a very busy couple of days of racing for everyone as they went out and attacked. Stage number 1 was going to be Piet Brandt. It was going to be a 15.9 kilometer run, so everyone will have fueled themselves correctly and will know exactly what is in store for them. A relatively easy first stage, just running alongside the main road of the B6, and then they would be able to come in at the end of it before they headed into stage number 2, which would be Jasper 1. The first running of Jasper, used a couple of times on the race weekend, and quite similar in length as well to stage number 1 from Piet Brandt. That would be a 16.19 kilometer run. For the crews that hadn't done the shakedown, this was a chance to make sure all those nuts and bolts were tight and the car was running sweet as they headed out on the tarmac to get themselves lined up to take on Super Special stage number 1, Piet Brandt. Taz would be seeing what they could do as they attacked in the S1 category. Johan Berg and Herman Roberts getting some last note checks before they're headed on out. The open wheels, but for this category in a rally, allowed to run a windscreen. Normally in off-road racing they're not allowed to run that, so this would be helping them out. Day 1, stage 1, and the beginning of the Cobarbus Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally with Willem Kuhn and Rene van Wyk in car 0, opening up the road, and the first racing charge would be put down and the time to chase on the weekend set by Dippenaar and Van der Westhuizen. They would go on to push super hard and take the first stage win with a run time of 9 minutes and 6 seconds, throwing down the gauntlet for everyone else to chase down. Dippenaar and Van der Westhuizen showing their form extremely early on in the 2018 running of their home event. Second car doing the chase down with the big number 1, an X-Factory Racing Toyota Yaris. Again, the all-wheel drive version of Jacco Redlinghuis and Dries Boysen, cracking on nicely and throwing down as best a time as they could possibly muster in the opening stages. stage 1 would offer out some problems, as we'd eventually see them bow out on stage number 2 with unfortunate terminal mechanical failure. That would mean that Jan Everson early on would have a good advantage to try and close in on a top 2, possibly top 3 finish alongside Fani Burtis in the first of the VW S2000s. They went on and stonked a rock-solid time, walking away with a third-place finish on stage with a run time of 11:23. Quite a long way off the back wheel of Dippenaar and Van der Westhuizen, which was a surprise as well, because normally you'd expect the first car having to open the road and spot all the markers and lay down the tracks for everyone else to follow to have a slight disadvantage and a slower pace. This time around, though, Dippenaar was strong enough to hold off a solid charge from the VW. The Polo went on stage number 1 to clock a third-place run time. For Land Rover fans out there, not just for recovery but also for racing, Land Rover Defender 3.9 V8, completely custom chassis, completely custom bodywork, and full-on race mode of Stefan and Christian Labuskakny. They'd go on to throw down a pretty decent run time, eventually finish on the exact same second as the Polo, giving them a third-place run time with a match time of 11:23. Couple of crumbs, though, put them down one position into 4th place. But a good start to the rally nonetheless for the Landy. The Landy was going to have a lot of support on the sidelines there as they headed into the night stages. They were already ready and set with their lights. They would no doubt be strapping on a little bit of extra illumination heading into the night stages later on day number 1. Bertie Smith and Dewald Venter in the Mazda Magnum also got themselves in a good position early on. An eventual opening stage number 1 time of 10:42 would have them just on the back wheel of Jandre Dippenaar and Gilly Visser come the end of play. A challenging drive then coming in from the BSC crew in the Mazda. We said this car was going to be interesting to watch throughout this rally. A lower suspension setting allowing them to drive without too much body roll. That would force them offline, so they set their suspension a little bit lower on their normally fully off-road spec vehicle. This went on to be the second fastest car on the opening stage, though. The Dippenaar brothers walking away with 1 and 2 set themselves up as race favourites. Jandre Dippenaar and Gilly Visser this time around in the Shell V-powered Ford Ranger off-road racing vehicle. On board with them to see how well they were coping in the stages. The rougher stages and the slightly higher stance of the Bakkie would allow them a little bit of extra vision and possibly allow them to close in on their brother out front. But it was still over 1 minute and 10 seconds, the gap between 1 and 2 come the end of stage number 1. And in rally terms, that literally is the difference between night and day. The lighties in the farm Bakkie, as we've been calling it, the Ford F100 V8, running the Lexus engine of Jaap Kurtzen and Vian Meyer. They were pretty much running a stock standard suspension setting, stock standard brakes, and just a huge lump of a V8 to see if they'd be able to walk away with some kind of glory. For them, it was all about just enjoying the show and enjoying the charge. A very respectable first stage of just over 12 minutes, 12:06 in fact, setting them inside, or just outside should I say, of a top 5, inside of a top 8. By no means the last car. The lighties were going to have a strong following throughout the 2018 running of the Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally. And for those in the know, you check what that is on the right hand side there, that's his elbow. So driving very Soddel van der Merwe style, just one hand on the wheel. For Willem and Johan Oosthuizen, it would be both hands and everything else on the wheel as they tried to tame the beast of the Ford Sapphire. One of the classic and older vehicles in the lineup here, and one of the few rear-wheel drives, giving us a completely different driving style to everyone else out there. That's what we see coming from classic rallying, all fixed diff and rear-wheel drive. Means it's going to be hanging the back end out around every single corner, early on the brakes and early on the gas to try and keep up momentum. The Sapphire would run good numbers as well to walk away with a first stage time of 12:53. Maybe a little bit too cautious though in the early stages of the rally would see them sitting close to the back of the pack. Jan Berg and Herman Roberts battling with the clutch early on in the event on the Toyota Conquest, and and they'd be praying that the thing would last the whole way to the finish line. The Conquest, one of the smaller powered vehicles out there, would go on to clock the slowest first stage, obviously having mechanical issues out there, and only clocking a 20-minute and 6-second first stage time, meaning that they were running in 10th spot going forward with the rest of the event. It was clear to everyone out there on the track there was some major fueling issues, and the car could not get the power down. It would be a question as to whether the Conquest would be able to stay in the rally. With 12 stages, stage 1 had already caused major problems. For Nicky Swart and Piet Retief in the space frame entry, with a windscreen for a little bit of extra measure, they'd be fun to watch going forward into the night stages. The Perspex windscreen would definitely offer some challenges to them, but the space frame was good enough to get some decent numbers on the page. The space frame would go on to eventually clock a very notable 12:32 to challenge for a top 5 placing come the end of stage number 1. Big vehicle, very hard to get stopped, very hard to turn as well. So the slightly more open stage number 1 did certainly help out. The unlimited suspension travel and V6 powered open wheeler, but the more technical stages and the night stages would certainly bring their own new challenges along the way. As the sun fell in Namibia, we strapped on the illuminations and got ready for the night stages. Jasper 1, which was special stage number 2, had already been raced in the dull light, and that once again gave Dippenaar and Van der Westhuizen the fastest run time. Second fastest time came in from their brothers Jean-Andre Dippenaar and Gilly Visser, and then the incredibly impressive Mazda Magnum of Bertie Smith and Dewald Venter went on to take third fastest. The night stages were the showgrounds and the Damteer stages before they drew a line under the first day of racing, and it was clear that Dippenaar and Van der Westhuizen were going to be tough to beat, starting to extend and control almost a 5-minute gap ahead of the rest of the field as the first day of the Gebabus Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally drew to a close. The night stages were more than a challenge for a lot of the teams, most of them having very little or no experience of nighttime driving. The Landy was in good shape as well, keeping themselves in the hunt as they stayed inside of the top 5 before they started day 2 of the event. By this stage though, we had already lost one of the key players. The number 1 plated Toyota Yaris of Jaco Redlinghuis and Dries Boysen were out after being unable to complete Super Special stage number 2. Farm Bakkie was squealing the tyres and impressing everyone as they did their one-arm driving style. And the lighties were in good shape. That's Kurtzer and Meyer. They'd be climbing the ladder as well and trying to challenge to break their way inside of a top 5. The Sapphire was also in good shape come the end of the night stages and would go on to finish day number 1 just outside of the top 5. The fueling issues early on for the Toyota Conquest has been cured, and they were still in it to win it for the rally, but they had lost a lot of time in the opening 2 specials before the first service.
Die teer was 'n lekker stage geweest. Bietjie uitpunt dit, maar het geloop.
Nicky Swart and Piet Retief in the space frame had a great day 1.
I'm Nicky Swart here from Gebabus. I'm a farmer here in the district. My navigator Piet, he's from Grootfontein. It was a lovely event this far. It's very joyful. We have a bit of a coil problem. We will sort it out hopefully this night.
I think today went very well for us. It is after 2 years we are re-entering with a new engine, new machine. We are still testing, but so far it's handling very good. We had some minor problems with the brakes, only a pin that was loose, but we fixed that immediately, and now we only have a small petrol leak on the tank, but we're fixing it right now. But so far it's going very well.
Okay, I'm Jan Meyer from Keetmanshoop, the far south. The race today was very nice. The car was no problems, and we enjoyed it. It's a very nice event. We will come next year again. Tomorrow we will finish, or try to finish, but we know we're going to finish the rest of the race and show the people what this farm truck can do.
And we'll be watching to see what the farm truck can deliver. Stay with us as we pick up on day 2 racing action from the Gebabus Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally.
The next edition of Racing with Celebs, we head to Mayhem Raceway with DJ Cleo, proudly brought to you by EV Dynamics and their associate sponsors, here on Ignition DSTV, Channel 189.
When we do new, we do
outstanding,
fresher,
what?
Juicier, hotter,
Hello,
unrivaled,
seriously, take your buddy on,
and A-grade. We do entertainment that will keep you glued to your screen. So make sure you catch the all-new Deception on Mnet, Guy's Family Road Trip on Food Network, A Night with My Ex on BBC Lifestyle, and Age Before Beauty on ITV Choice. Cause it's all brand new this month only on DSTV.
Great!
So for the first 4 racing stages of the 2018 running of the Kebaba Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally, it was good to go, and welcome to day number 2. 8 racing stages, opening up with Jasper, 16.9 kilometers. Road access, though, meant that a couple of the illegal, in other words, not roadworthy vehicles, had to get trailered in, and that was the open wheel space frame, as well as the farm bucky. The farm bucky, totally illegal vehicle, unable to be driven on the roads, so the lighties had to get trailered in, and they would be able to, as soon as their wheels got onto the dirt, get racy and get tasty once again. An overnight race lead of over 5 minutes saw Vilru Dippenaar and Rian van der Westhuizen in the Toyota Auris flat out and enjoying a healthy race lead as they once again opened up racing on day number 2. Jasper had already been raced early on day number 1 as stage number 2 of the event, so they'll have known exactly where they were going. But remember, Jasper on day number 1 was raced in very low light conditions, so day number 2 would offer slightly better visibility. Jandro Dippenaar and Gilly Visser were also in great shape as they controlled a number 2 spot and were showing that the war between full factory spec rally racing vehicles and off-road racing vehicles was not as big as a gap as everyone thought, but the high speed and top end was definitely in the hands of the rally car. The Bucky languishing on top end, around about 20 to 25 kilometers slower than Vilru Dippenaar and Rian van der Westhuizen on the big high-speed straights. The Ranger running a 5.3 litre 20 valve vehicle and a 2 litre 16 valve high revving vehicle in the hands of his brother. On board though with Jan Everson and Fonnie Burtis in the VW Polo S2000. This throws down the same kind of power when it can as the Toyota, but clearly the VW was not able to run strong pace, and that would see them dropping down the order coming the end of the opening 2 stages of day number 2. Mechanical issues were starting to become prevalent as some of the key players were just plummeting off the score sheets early on day 2. The VW just unable to run big numbers. The Land Rover and the V8 thundering sound from Christian and Stefan Labuskakny were giving the crowd something to talk about as they climbed the ladder, once again finishing inside of the top 5 and showing that they had an all-round setup on their vehicle to attack the faster, the tighter, the longer, the high speed, the night and the day stages. The space frame was off the trailer and onto the dust as Nicky Swart and Piet Retief sorted out their overnight issues and were on point as they now started to climb the ladder, setting times that would put them inside of the top 7 in the overalls. The Sapphire going through some development, as they said, on their engine and fixing a slight leak in their fuel tank, sorting out all their brake issues, and they looked much more racy on day number 2 of the event, as they also threw down some great times coming out of Willem and Johan Oosthuizen, also challenging for a top 6 placing in the overalls, as their times were starting to tally quite nicely. .10.52 would put them in the mix. For Jaap Kurtzen and Vian Meyer, with some of the biggest support on the sidelines for their farm bucky, they were charging hard, but would have to step off the gas every now and again, just unable to keep control of the big dog, with very little suspension travel to play with and a ton of horsepower. Jasper was a big challenge for the farm bucky. Still though, a 13-minute flat runtime did not see them in last place. Unfortunately, that honour befalling once again the total conquest of Jan Berg and Herman Roberts. Vasbait was the next stage and one of the shortest specials on the tour, 9.4 kilometers, meaning it was called the sprint stage of the event, and run times were expected to be in the low 7 minutes. A 7-minute 10 coming in from Wilru Dippenaar and Rian van der Westhuizen, showing their class, but of course a shorter stage means tighter times. This time around, they weren't able to pull the pern as far away. The bucky closed them in this time around, Jandro Dippenaar and Guillaume Visser. Gilly did a good job on the notes, and they lost only 20 seconds this time around to run a stage time of 7 minutes 30 versus Brother on a 7:10. Those are good numbers. It was a rough time for the Mazda this time around. The Magnum unfortunately only posting the 6th fastest time on this stage after throwing down some great numbers early on in the rally. Gearbox problems causing them to lose a ton of time, only walking away with an 8 minutes 52 versus a stage winning time of 7:10. That allowed Jan Everson and Fanny Burtis to come back into play as well. They'd had a problem on the previous stage, and this time around they threw down a good number. 8 minutes 19 gave them the 4th fastest run time on the stage. They were beaten out this time though by this pairing. The incredible Land Rover Defender seemed to come to life on the short sprint stage, and at 8 minutes 8 seconds gave them the 3rd fastest stage time and saw them start to really cement their place inside now the top 4 for the rally overall. Nicky Swart and Piet Retief in the space frame didn't necessarily enjoy this stage as best as they did some of the longer stages. The space frame going on to walk away with an 8:22, still giving them one of their best results of the rally thus far. The Oosthuizens also fared relatively well, not losing too much time in the overalls. At 9 minutes and 11 seconds, still saw them running just outside the top 6, taking the 7th fastest stage time of the rally across all the categories. The Sapphire was still in good form. The farm bucky, the Ford V8 of Jaap Kurtzen and Vian Meyer, threw down one of the best runs of the day. An 8:52 saw them inside of the top 5. Stay with us after the break to see if they can climb even higher as we go forward with the remaining stages on the final day of the rally.
We've still got to sort the rear brake and the spacers, but everyone here is so helpful.
We win.
This is what racing should be all about, having fun, meeting people. So this is cool. It's a good day. It's shaping it well.
I'm Narina Visser.
And I'm Hannah Zaidi, and we are shaking things up a little bit on the show.
Taking a broader look into the world of ETFs and the new developments that take place in the industry. Join Narina Visser and Hannah Zaidi as they speak to the country's top ETF experts and take your ETF questions live in studio.
An ETF that's good for you need not be a good ETF.
And what that really means is for the same expected return, we can get a lower risk. So for investors, you don't need to take on the same level of risk.
Let's ETF Investor only on Business Day TV.
With Super Special stage number 7, Jasper 3 already done and dusted, we move forward into Golf Barn number 1. A 10.9 kilometer stage, but a slightly faster, more open, would see some of the shortest race stage times coming in from the rally. Wilru Dippenaar and Rian van der Westhuizen had gone unbeaten on the rally at this stage, winning every single one of the stages. And they were now eyeballing the last 4 stages to see if they could have the perfect rally, go unbeaten on 12 specials, and walk away as the champs. Their biggest threat at the moment was brother Jean-Andre Dippenaar and Gilly Visser in the bakkie. But again, going on and clocking the fastest time on the fastest and shortest special with a winning time of 6 minutes 52. Absolutely hammering the nail and extending by yet another 30 seconds in the overall. The previous stage had seen them extend further with another 35 seconds in hand. Every single time the gap was growing bigger and bigger. And Dippenaar and van der Westhuizen clearly had a good setup on their Shell V-Power Toyota, as they just did not lift off any of the gas over some of the big bumps. The unofficial long jump world champions of Namibia in the off-road and rally world, Jean-Andre Dippenaar and Gilly Visser, would have the tape measure out to see if they could best their brother. The bakkies often do catch a little bit more air than the cars, but it was not about air time and the show. At this stage, it was all about time and the ticking clock. The second fastest stage time coming in from Super Special 8, a 7 minute 28, but a loss of over 35 seconds again to the flying Toyota Auris of Wilru and Rian out front. The second fastest run time would still see them extend and cement their place, running number 2 overall in the rally, as it looked like Jan Everson and Fani Burtis were starting to get themselves into a comeback trail, but they also were locked in a battle with the Land Rover Defender. That was the big dice on the cards for 3rd place on the rally. The Polo, after having problems early on day number 1 and a little bit of a hiccup on the early stages of day number 2, were fighting back to try and cling on to their 3rd place in the rally. The momentum at the moment was in the hands of Stefan and Christian Labuschagne, as they were really flying on day number 2, as they seemed to have dusted themselves off, blown off all the cobwebs, and got real quick on the terrain up in Namibia. The run time from the Polo gave them an 8:22, but that was only fast enough for a 4th place finish on stage. So once again, they were losing time to their rivals. The sandy conditions not really suiting the Polo this time around. Looked like they dropped their suspension travel a little bit too much and were just spinning up the tires in the sand. But for this pairing, in the Land Rover Defender, the 3.9 powered V8 machine of Stefan and Christian Labuschagne, they were now, as we call in racing terms, in the zone. They powered out at the start chute and went on to record the 3rd fastest stage time on 8 minutes and 18 seconds. That put 4 valuable seconds into their arch rivals in the Polo. One of their highest stage finishes on the rally so far. Now they knew exactly who their rivals were. It was between themselves and the V-Dub to see who would walk away with 3rd place on the rally. And from now on, with just 3 stages to count after this one, it was all to play for. The open wheelers had done really well on day number 2. The space frame of Nicky Swart and Piet Retief went on to take a 4th place overall in the stage. And 8 minutes 27 seconds saw them beating out on the Sapphire as well as the Farm Bakkie, who were locked in a war. They were on an 8 minute 44 for both of those cars, but the open wheeler had really started to find their footing in the slightly faster open sprint stages that dominated day number 2 of the rally. The night stages, as with all off-road and rally races, were all about survival. They got through it, just a little bit of spannering, but day number 2 is where they really started to look like a tasty pairing, and the setup on the space frame open wheeler was starting to become a massive threat. If you remember the coverage that we gave you last year, these stages were dominated by the side-by-side buggies in last year's event. Them not making the trip across meant we were going to see new players on the podium and taking category wins. For Willem and Johan Oosthuizen in the Ford Sapphire, they had a pretty decent run, coming out with a stage time of an 8:44. That was matched by the Farm Bakkie, but they were only 10 seconds off the back wheel of the space frame. So the Sapphire had also found its footing late on in the rally, this being the 4th remaining stage on the tour as part of the Gebabis Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally. The Sapphire had definitely breathed itself back into life halfway through day number 2. A hard hit on the front end would have driver and co-driver holding their breath slightly. The problem with those heavy front end landings being that the cooling systems do take a bit of a knock, and they'd be checking to see if their car would be able to handle it. Unfortunately, it looked like the heavy nose landing had caused them major issues as they crept into the finish zone. For the Farm Bucky, they walked away with a great run time of an 8:44. That matched the Sapphire and would see them challenging now to try and crack their way inside of the top 5. On the rally so far, they were sitting down in 8th place and trying to get through on their arch rivals, who would now become the Ford Sapphire pairing of Willem and Johan Oosthuizen. The Bucky was out there just putting on the show, and they definitely were the crowd favorite with their aggressive but casual driving style. It was all about putting on the show, having fun, and hanging the back end out for the farm truck. Come the end of the stage then, an 8:44 would see them get a nice, tasty 7th place finish, shared with the Sapphire. The comeback story of the tour and of the rally was the total conquest of Johan Berg and Herman Roberts. Clutch and gearbox problems had dogged them the whole way through the event, and once again they walked away with the 2nd fastest time of the stage, an 11:52, keeping them down at the bottom of the pile, but beating out on the Mazda Magnum that suffered near on terminal gearbox and clutch problems on this stage.
Nee, Gebabis was baie lekker vandag. Ons geniet dit hierso.
Willem and his wife from OS Motors enjoying the show so far as we close in on the final 2 stages of the event. Both of them very much sprint events and short in the running. 7.24 kilometers for the final tasting of the showground stage. Tight and technical, and also one of the shortest race run times. The only stage shorter than that is the Damtier stage, which would be the final stage of the event. So this, the penultimate stage of the running of the 2018 Gebabis Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally, and once again the fastest run time coming in from Vilru Dippenaar. He clocked a win as he had done with the 10 previous stages coming up to this, and after this he had one more stage to go to see a clean scorecard, as they say, and in motorsport terms around the world that is a very rare thing indeed. It's like getting a hole-in-one. A 5:46 gave him the win ahead of brother on a 6:16 coming in from Jean-André Dippenaar and Gilly Visser. They were pushed close this time around though. Some nice times coming in from the VW, a 6:41, losing them out just over a minute on the race leaders, but importantly pulling them up and getting them back into the fight for 2nd place as they went up against the Bucky. The VW definitely a little bit more easily handleable in the slower technical corral sections that we're on board with, and that allowed them to close in, losing out on the stage to 2nd place winners just over 25 seconds, and that will help them out big time. The Labuschagne also having a good run this time around. This car very much blurring the lines, as we've said the whole way through this show, between the setup for rally and off-road, and the time showed as well, able to run strong pace on the sprint short tech as well as the long high-speed wide open horsepowers. They seem to have a good setup on their car. A 6:44 would see them taking a very close run, 4th place finish. 5th place went to this car, the Space Frame, running a 6:45, so just 1 second in between the Space Frame and the Land Rover, and in fact only 4 seconds separating the VW, the Land Rover, and the Space Frame. On board with the Sapphire, which would have been a real handful in a very short sprint and slow technical section like this. Remember, it's only rear-wheel drive, so the front end does tend to push out in the slow speed stuff, and you've got to do what we call in off-road and rally racing rear-wheel steering. In other words, using the horsepower and the fixed diff to wag the tail and make sure the car turns around. Stage number 11 was a difficult one for the Sapphire as they walked away with a 7:16 run time. That hurt them in the overalls. They lost out 20 seconds to their arch rivals, but they've been locked into a titanic battle to try and get into the top 6 for the rally. Farm Truck walked away with a 6.56 in the hands of Kurtzen and Meyer. For Berg and Roberts in the Conquest, they had their best stage to date, taking 7th place. Join us after the break as we close in on the final stage of the rally.
This week on KCC, we kick off with our Entrepreneur of the Week, who's a door-to-door detailer.
Guys, you must remember, every step that you take, before you take that step, you must feel it.
Yep.
You see, if it's not smooth, start step 1 again. Again about.
Yes,
Yeah,
you got
good.
that. I'm out and about catching up with all of you, Balonis.
They say VWs for small boys. Do you agree?
Yeah, I am agree with that.
So VWs for small boys?
Yeah. Colette meets up with an avid petrol head.
Most guys with polos are lazy. They're lazy to think. So I thought to myself, you know what? If
You're
I get this-
rude.
And I head down to Durban for State of Stance.
Which is your favorite car that you saw today, Baba?
In fact, white thinking, I'm not interested in cars. Yeah.
That's Classic Car Culture only on Ignition DSTV channel 189.
I haven't had an uninterrupted shower since the early 2000s.
Sometimes all the love in the world
Chris has a lack of vision for this house.
can't solve a problem.
I fell in love with it straight away. I felt at home in it. I thought, this is ours, this is great.
It's more than a very nice room. It's a beautiful room.
There's no denying it, it's time to move to greener pastures.
The start of your property search.
I think you're wasting your time, Andrew.
How awesome is that?
It's going to feel twice the size.
Well, it is twice the size.
It all comes down to this. Will they love it?
Or will they list it?
It's so torn.
On this episode of The Lifted Life, Steve transforms an old rust bucket Bronco into a new school off-road wonder with an epic build of an iconic Ford four-wheeler. The crew have their marching orders to turn this vintage four-wheeler from a Rough Rider into a modern-day trail-busting marvel. But can Steve rally the troops to get it done before SEMA? And Jake takes a break to see big power diesels thunder down the Bandamere quarter mile.
Kababas, and for the final time of asking, stage 12 of the 2018 running of the Kababas Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally took us to Damtier. This was the shortest run, and for Wilru Dippenaar and Rian van der Westhuizen, very much a glory run as they looked to go clean on the tour and walk away with the final, making it 12 wins out of 12 stages, almost unheard of on the tour. Extremely dry as well. The dam was way down this year as all the service and support vehicles came through to make sure that the track was good to go before we went racing. Car Zero opened up the track for us in the V Shell Power colours before we got our final tasting of the unstoppable Toyota Auris 2-litre 16-valve run by Wilru Dippenaar and Rian van der Westhuizen. An early congratulations for an outstanding rally that sees them as running champions way out front. They would eventually go on to take one of their smallest victories, which was expected on a very short run like this. A 3-minute 21, beating out by 11 seconds only this time around Jean-Andre Dippenaar and Gilly Visser. But as they say in motorsport, whether it's 1 hour or 1 second or half a second, a win is a win is a win. 11 seconds eventually, and showing out for the crowd, using the final bit of rubber that he had left on the rims to style up the final big U-turns before parking it up for the last time of asking. Jean-Andre Dippenaar and Gilly Visser had answered a lot of critics as well to see if the trucks could run as fast as the rally cars. Not quite as fast, but real close. All the stages, in fact almost all the stages, taking second place, only getting beaten out a couple of times by the V-dub of Jan Everson and Fonnie Burtis. This time around, a 3:32 cemented and underlined that they would be second fastest on the event, even though there was a little bit of a moving chicane for them to deal with in the closing stages as someone sneaked out onto the rally course. Not too bad an attrition rate as well, with 10 cars starting, just the one car with a big fallout, and that was early on day number 1 for Jaco Redlinghus and Dries Boysens, who would definitely have been in the running for a top 3 placing. This time around though, starting to come good on the halfway marker of day number 2 was Jan Everson and Fani Boertes in the VW S2000. They went on to take the third fastest stage time on a 3:43, beating out their arch rivals on the tour and on the rally so far in the Land Rover Defender of Stefan and Christian Labuschagne. That looked like it was going to be decisive and should have cemented them into the third place for the rally overall. The VW had a couple of teething problems at the rally this time around, but good enough to park it up and call themselves third place and podium places in the 2018 running of the Gebabis Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally. Issues on the stage once again, you could hear not firing on all cylinders, and those intermittent mechanical problems and fueling issues are what held back the VW from challenging for the top 2 steps. Those controlled by the Shell V-Power pairing of the Dippenaars. The Land Rover has really been a powerhouse, sprinting on the sprint stages, wide open on the wide open fast stages, and Stefan and Christian Labuschagne have definitely made a name for themselves. They took a couple of top 3 placings along the way, but unfortunately in the end, in the rally overall, they were bested by the VW, the Ford Bucky and the Toyota. They would have to go on and settle for a 4th place, but this is definitely one of the best drives we have seen coming out of the now polished setup on the car and very well-gelled pairing of the Labuschagne brothers. A final stage time of 3:54 allowed them a 5th place finish overall. 4th place and one of their best drives of the tour, and a crew that seemed to come to life late on in the stages and in the rally. They would go on to take a 6th place, but the times were extremely close on the 12th and final stage of the rally. A 3:54, but ahead of them was a couple of 3:52s. That held by the Sapphire of the Oosthuizens, and an incredible drive coming out of the Conquest of Berg and Roberts. So the space frame showed that it can go up against the might of the Buckies and the rally spec cars, but on the tight technical, where the times and seconds really do count, unfortunately unable to run exactly where they want to be. The Ford Sapphire, one of the couple of crews walking away with a 3:52 coming out of the final stage. So it was going to be fun to see how that actually worked out in the overalls. Remember, on the rally so far, it has been the Sapphire versus the space frame. That overjump in the previous stage did cause them a little bit of overheating issues. And on the final stage, it was clear they weren't pushing the Sapphire as fast or as hard as they would have liked, just to make sure the engine didn't let go, didn't overheat and cook, and they were able to make the finish line, which is a big story in rally. You've got to finish all the stages, you've got to get to the end, no matter what. Sapphire was clearly not going through all the revs, but it was going to go on to record a finish and go on to challenge for a top 6 placing in the rally overall. Out on track then, the Ford Bucky was absolutely charging and just having a great time. They did what they set out to do, racing in their own category in the OR2. Jaap Kurtzen and Wiaan Meyer would go on to record not a great time, but still in the mix. A 4:02 would see them as second slowest on the stage, and it would lose them a lot of time in their battle to try and claw a top 6 finish. But the Farm Bucky was going to do the unthinkable, start the rally, finish all the stages, and end the rally before they loaded up onto the trailer and headed on home. Look at the wheel work going on there as well. No power steering on the big Ford. It is all body language and working the wheel as hard as you possibly can. Great to see the Farm Bucky running the numbers, and the crowd were extremely appreciative of the youngest pairing of Jaap Kurtzen and Wiaan Meyer and what they were able to do. The Conquest having early event problems, fueling and gearbox issues as well as clutch issues, but they also stayed in it. They didn't retire and they were able to run good pace in the closing 4 stages of the event. This time around, a 3:52 put them in tied 5th place on the stage. Exactly the same run time coming in from the Ford Sapphire of Willem and Johan Oosthuizen. So the Taz had also done what they set out to do, which was complete all stages and finish the rally. 12 stages of racing is a tough ask for any car of any category, any spec and any cost. One of the cheapest racing cars to run out there, and still why we see so many of them around the country. This is slightly cheaper though. The Donkey Kart cleaning the track for us as we wrap up shop here at the 2018 running of the Cobarbus Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally. 2 days of racing, 12 incredible stages, most of them sprint stages as well, keeping things nice and tight on the timing and scoring. Everyone was parked up in the post-race paddock and getting themselves ready for the prize giving. There's a great fun atmosphere, and as always, Cobarbus hosting us and giving us one of the best rallies, great visuals and great support from everyone who is part of this amazing sport of rally and off-road racing. For the rally, it's part of the festival that runs up at Cobarbus, meaning there is an incredible fun and family atmosphere. As we close things down and headed into prize giving though, it was time for everyone to start taking their overalls off, getting cleaned up and getting ready to celebrate what has been once again an incredible 5th running of the Cobarbus Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally. To all the sponsors, Shell V-Power, Redline, Cobarbus Auto Truck and Tractor, as well as Amateco, Ellie's, Cobarbus Toyota, House Motors, Hemco Paint, and PZN Panel Beaters. It was a great story from their involvement, and as always with all sponsors, we cannot do this without you guys. So from the Shell V-Power Cobarbus Rally, thank you for being involved. Dippy's had some great words to wrap up shop here, and no doubt will be able to go forward with his Shell V-Power support, and all the sponsors should be able to get back up here across the border to Namibia and come racing once again in 2019. To all the marshals, the medics and everyone who is out there making the running, often going unthanked, but at this event we do like to make some noise about them. To all the sponsors, to everyone who had been out there doing the course setting and the marking and making sure that everyone was able to go racing, have the fun and get it done safely. They were all handed rewards and awards and mentioned by name. In the categories, it was great to see everyone walking away with all of their trophies. And as we sign off with the main man from Shell V-Power, Johan Grobler, he can be nothing but happy with his involvement and the show that he gets at these kind of events. Within the prize-giving ceremony, not only the overall rally champions being crowned, but as well as category champions. Awards being handed out to the S1, 2 and 3 categories, as well as the OR 1 and 2s. And incredibly enough, only the one car unable to not finish the rally. Everyone who made the trophies and made the podiums knew they'd been in a fight, and there were very, very close times. In fact, the timing giving us some of our closest racing we have had to date in the 5 years of the running of the Cobarbus Shell V-Power Cattle Country Rally. When it came time to confirm the winners, it was no big surprise to see Wilru Dippenaar and Rian van der Westhuizen walking away with the win to the tune of almost 8 minutes ahead of Dippenaar and Visser. So brothers rooting the roost out front. The Vida Polo of Jan Everson and Brutus came good in the end to manage to walk away with a top 3 placing. And commiserations to Jacco Redlingace and Dries Boysen, the only DNF, in other words, did not finish of the event. We caught up with Jan Grobler and Oom Dippies at the end of this amazing rally.
It's a real honor for us as Vivo Energy Namibia to host the 5th annually Cobarbus V-Power Cattle Country Rally. It was indeed a good rally for us. We saw both of our teams end on the podium, especially on first and second place. Our main driver, Wilru Dippenaar and Rian van der Westhuizen, we saw that they won this challenge in 5 consecutive years, and a big special thanks from us as Vivo in Namibia. we see that this is an annual event, and for us as the main sponsor here at the Cattle Country Shell V-Power Rally, we would see and love to see that this continue as a good challenge in the country. Thank you.
For me as chairman of the Red Line Motor Club, we're very proud to say that we've got involvement with Viva Energy Namibia for the fifth consecutive year. We ran this rally in Gobabis, and we're very proud to say that the team that's sponsored by them won the rally 5 times in a row, and we're very proud of that. Again, very thanks to Viva Energy Namibia, and we like to thank all the other people, also our co-partners, that help us to make this event a success. Thank you very much.
Final words then from Dippies, as he's known and as we like to know him. A last-minute celebration, a braai as always, to draw a line under once again a spectacular running of the 2018 Gobabis Shell V-Power Cattle Rally, brought to you by Shell V-Power and all their associate sponsors.